Yeah, I've got. One, I think that it's basically a statement of nature. I would say well, mostly, this is shown on person. There are cases. Where the state constitution so there's arguing that we're going to try, especially when what's that? Yeah. It's certainly all these changes. It's like with all these changes, pros and cons. Seriously.
Excuse me, what again?
KCT. Yeah. So. Well, I mean, it's yeah. So it's
Good afternoon. We'll call this committee of Judiciary Committee together for the order and call the roll.
Senators Dixon. Here. Ponder. Here. Emery. Here. Schaefer. Schmidt. Keating. Here. Stitt.
Here.
Youngmore.
Order being established, we will just go over a few things before we get into our first bill. As a point of information, KCTV 5 and Progress Missouri have been given permission to film today's proceedings. We do have 7 bills to hear today, and we also have an executive session, so I would ask, pursuant to our standard procedure, just please do not read testimony. If you have something that's written and you'd like for the committee to have that, please give it to one of the staff members, and we will distribute that to each committee member in full so that they have that. Please summarize your points rather than reading them. Also, in your efforts to be succinct so that we can get through all the bills, if something that you want to say has already been said, please try to very briefly, if you will, just ditto that or repeat that you feel the same way rather than going through the same thing again as we do these bills. Remember that testimony in this committee is limited to 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. That is apart from any questions that may be asked by committee members. And testimony will be taken for and against each bill. No informational testimony. And if you would please address the entire committee rather than specific members. So with that, we'll get started. House Bill 152, if Representative Clark is here. Representative, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Elijah Harr from the 134th District in Southwest Springfield. Today I'm here to introduce House Bill 152. House Bill 152 is a fairly simple bill designed to do one thing: give state and local prosecutors one more tool in the fight against human trafficking in our state. What this legislation does is add advertisement of a victim to the felony crime of trafficking. It's patterned off of Congresswoman Ann Wagner's SAVE Act on the federal level. As a few bits of reference of why we brought the bill in the state. Human trafficking generates about $9.5 billion a year in the United States. 300,000 children are at risk, and the average age of those children is between 12 and 14 years old. The average victim may be forced to have sex up to 30 to 40 times a day when they're being trafficked. The problem is real, and it's real in Missouri. The Department of Justice estimates that St. Louis is one of the top 20 human trafficking jurisdictions in the country. We could go through statistics all day long. I think we'll all agree human trafficking is bad. What we have here is an area in the law that I think needs to be corrected. I believe this bill does it, and I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you for your testimony, for your introduction of the bill. Any questions for the bill's sponsor? Senator.
So, of course, you and I represent our visited on this bill, and I'm strongly with what your bill mainly does is adds the word advertising in several places in our statute. Could you explain how the advertising for sex acts?
The most common advertising is through a website called Backpage.com. Backpage is essentially Craigslist with no rules. Literally go on there and you can order a 12-year-old boy in your room if you want. Nationally, they've attempted to crack down on it. They've filed lawsuits against Backpage. Backpage refuses to take anything down. There's also a variety of low-tech tactics they use in order to traffic victims. They hand out pamphlets, they put bulletins on flyers. There's also apps that they use, Omegle and Yik-Yak. And what we're attempting to do is essentially keep Missouri at the forefront of combating trafficking by giving prosecutors a chance to go after the middlemen. If somebody's doing the advertising, but they're not specifically supplying the victim, or doing the recruiting or enticing, we essentially have nothing we can use to go after advertising and prevent the Johns from ever showing
our perception of performances, then that very act of advertising should be an element of criminal prosecution. We believe, and I appreciate that this legislature has done on this subject, that dealing with this subject of human trafficking, the horrible indignity that it is to women, the ravage that it proves to be to the souls of women for much of their lives, is a pro-life issue. And it's one that this legislature needs to continue to forcefully address. Now is the time for this General Assembly to do as it did 4 years ago, and to close this major conduit for the continuing victimization of innocent women and children. I appreciate your favorable consideration of the bill.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else who can testify in support of the bill? Please come forward.
Chairman, thank you. I will be brief here. My name is Linda Laird, and I'm representing Concerned Women for America. Our position would be in favor of closing any gaps that remain, including the advertising as related in this bill, that would be harmful to any of our children on any level. Not only does it advertise for actual abuse, but even the advertising alone can be stimulus for other activities outside of it. So our recommendation is for this bill. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in support of House Bill 152?
Emily Vanchik, Missouri Kids First. Just wanted to go on record in support of House Bill 152 and thank the representative for his leadership on this issue. Trafficking is something that is absolutely very real in our state that we need to do more about. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Emily?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mick Covington, Missouri Sheriff Association, like long record.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in support? Last call.
Good afternoon. My name is Nanette Ward, and I'm a volunteer with the Central Missouri Stop Human Trafficking Coalition. That's been in existence since 2008 and been a volunteer for these last 7 years. I'd like to add my support to what's already been stated, but to add from the perspective of someone that's had the opportunity and privilege to work with survivors who have been trafficked as minors right here in Missouri. And without a doubt, part of that crime against them was the advertisement of them being available for purchase for sex. I know that we've had our own case, many cases, but one case where a mother in southern Missouri advertised her daughter to sell to men that she knew. But without a doubt, the individuals that were in Cumming, Missouri, trafficked as minors were advertised. They were trafficked out of motels and trafficked out of a home into residential drop-off. And this bill addresses that very significant piece in the crime against our children, which is basically rape of our young boys and girls in our state. So I'm supportive of this and available if you have any questions.
Senator.
I'm sorry, we have a quick question. And this is, I mean, this is kind of a technical question. I just was curious. Right now, we include recruits, entices, harbors, transports, providers, or obtains, and we're adding advertises. With that incident that you described, with the mother and the minor children, would that not be captured with any of the others? Was she prosecuted? You know,
I don't know if she was. I believe it would probably fall under the provides because she was the provider. Again, the focus here is primarily on the middleman because there's not really a place to get them.
Right, okay, so that we're probably already catching the mother.
So in terms of the minors who were advertised, who were kept by traffickers, it's definitely advertisements. They were, one individual was taken to different hotels based on the advertisement, yes.
Yeah, arm's length transaction.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? All right, thanks very much for this. Anyone else in support of House Bill 152?
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Luberg. I'm a survivor of human trafficking and an advocate for the Central Missouri Stop Human Trafficking Coalition in Columbia. I get to mentor and speak to many, many people. And as this awareness comes to Missouri, I'm just here to support it and just bring more awareness and to let you guys know that this is not going on somewhere else, not just in St. Louis, it's going on in our neighborhoods now. So I'm here to support that. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you for your advocacy. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else in support of House Bill 152? Anyone to testify in opposition? That will close the hearing on House Bill 152. We'll now move to House Committee substitute for House Bill 104. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, members of the committee, my name is Elijah Harr, 134th District in Southwest Springfield. Today I bring before you House Committee substitute for House Bill 104. What House Bill 104 attempts to do is prevent discrimination against religious student organizations on campus. Now, to understand the process that brought House Bill 104 forward, it's important to understand the history of religious groups on campus. Traditionally, universities have been a place that have housed a variety of different student groups and allowed their students to be a member of each of these groups or whichever groups whichever ones that the groups chose to select. They occur in a variety of different settings. There's Greek organizations, there's political organizations, there's honor societies, and there's religious organizations. In the past few years, new policies have begun to emerge. Universities have traditionally had non-discrimination policies, but those policies weren't applied to student groups. In the past few years, a new policy has arisen called an all-comers policy. What an all-comers policy says is that a student group can only continue to exist on campus if it allows anyone that wants to join the group. Unfortunately, these all-comers policies have, instead of being enforced across the board, have used to selectively and systematically target religious groups on campus. The most well-known example is in the California state system, where four different religious organizations, including the University Christian Fellowship, Chi Alpha, Campus Crusade, were each kicked off of the 18 different California state campuses for violating the all-comers policy. Last year at Vanderbilt, same issue. Again, it was religious groups that were used or were targeted by the all-comers policy, the Asian American Christian Fellowship, Baptist Student Union, along with 9 others. What this bill attempts to do is simply say that a religious organization cannot be treated differently than other traditional student organizations. If a campus wants to adopt an all-comers policy and apply it, they're going to have to apply it across the board, which means that the Republican group has to allow Democrats to join. It means that the Greek organizations, fraternities have to accept women, sororities have to accept men, or they would fall in violation of the all-comers policy. Specifically, the House Bill 104 just says that religious organizations cannot be discriminated against or treated differently than other traditional student groups. Now, one of the things that House 104 has, or one of the oppositions, is that it's solely out there to protect Christian groups. That's not true. It's to protect any sort of religious groups. And actually, I was just about an hour ago emailed a brief statement of support from Imam Sohaib Sultan, the Muslim chaplain at Princeton, and Rabbi Eaton Webb, the Jewish chaplain at Princeton University, who emailed a brief statement of support. If it's okay with the chair, I'll read it, or I can distribute it after, whatever your preference is. It's about 3 sentences long. The long history of people of faith in this country show that protections for religious freedom are extremely important to Muslim and Jewish religious practices. This is doubly true for institutions of higher learning and for Muslim and Jewish student groups on campus. Just recently, a Jewish student was discriminated against at UCLA because of her membership in a Jewish campus student group. Missouri would do well to prevent this kind of discrimination by enacting House Bill 104, protecting all the different religious groups on Missouri campuses. Again, the focus of this bill is to simply require that religious groups are treated the same as all other student groups and protect their ability to to select their membership and the leadership based upon the tenets that they're sincerely held in religious beliefs.
Okay. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Kevin.
Thank you, Representative. Number one, I told you this, that a Jewish woman was discriminated in a Jewish organization in California.
What happened was a student who was a member of Jewish organization applied to the Student Government Association. At her hearing, several people raised concerns that because she was a member of a Jewish group, they didn't want her on the panel.
So it wasn't the Jewish group that discriminated.
No, it was the Student Government
That's what you
Association.
said, right?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that what you said? Isn't that what you said there?
He said just recently a Jewish student was discriminated against at UCLA because of her membership in a Jewish campus student group.
All right. Now, I've read all these testimonies. Have any of these ever happened in Missouri?
I'm sorry?
Did any of these occurrences ever happen in Missouri?
Not at this point.
So this is a preemptive?
It is.
And as for the religious groups, is there something wrong with the all-inclusive policy with all people welcome?
There's not, except in a religious group. There's actually a great quote by Justice Brennan that I didn't find, or I didn't bring with me today, but that for a religious group to maintain its central purpose, it has certain parameters that the religious group laid down. For instance, the Jewish student group may require membership to be kosher. If we're to accept members that weren't kosher, or to accept leadership that wasn't kosher, it may water down the group's purpose on campus, their ability to portray that purpose to the world. And so because of that, we grant religious groups certain autonomy in how they select their membership and their leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator So I guess my first question, you mentioned other states, is the language that's in front of us in this bill, for lack of a better term, model language, is this language found in statute in other states? Is there an organization, or several organizations have been working on this verbiage specifically, or was this generated in house research?
This language was initially given to me based upon the language Oklahoma passed last year. It passed unanimously in the House and Senate. It's been tweaked just slightly in the House. We changed it to model after some of the federal statutory language. But I believe each state's been a little different. When Virginia passed this language, they went ahead and passed it to apply to all student groups, basically saying that all student groups have their autonomy. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. We haven't seen all student groups being targeted by any of the all-comers policies other than religious groups, and we decided to draw it narrowly. Obviously, if we saw a Republican come kicked off campus because they were being taken over, we could fix that, but we're not trying to fix a problem that we've never seen. We're just trying to fix a problem that we've seen.
So a few other questions, and I think you just restated one. We have the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act at the federal level that's been the subject of litigation. There's been this back and forth between Congress and the Supreme Court over, over when taking peyote can cause religion, unemployment benefits, et cetera. And that's been going on for some time. In looking at sub 2, on the second page here, it looks like and a lot of work on Luca back in the day, but it's been 15 years. It looks like that we may be paralleling the federal statute on that somewhat, or is this different? Is it stronger than Luca, or how?
It should not be stronger than the federal. Our goal was to bring it into as much congruence with the federal language as possible. And we've actually had two of the professors from the University of Missouri Law School both looked at it and worked together trying to tweak the language just a bit to bring it into.
Sure. And I know there's some defined terms, including exercise of religion, substantially burdened, et cetera. And I understand that, we're prohibiting, we're defining substantially burdened in a few different ways. I guess I think when we talk about it, higher ed institution penalizing conduct, I think that's probably something I can get that I would say is sufficiently definite for me to understand what constitutes a penalty and what doesn't. Although again, I suspect that could be the subject of litigation. Certainly denying the opportunity to engage in religious activity. Again, there could be litigation around the fringes of what would or would not constitute that. But when we get to the word, and forgive me, pressures a student, and I guess my
question is have other states defined this any more tightly than that? And the reason I ask, I just don't want to see us get into a situation where we created a right of action that, frankly, keeps a lot of lawyers very busy for a really long time on what does and doesn't fit the bill, so to speak. And pressures, to me, just seems like a word that I can spend an awful lot of the court's time on.
Well, from one lawyer to another, I'd hate to drum up business for the legal.
Sure.
Again, this was drafted off of Oklahoma's, which I believe mirrors the other 7 fairly closely. Virginia may be the exception because they broadened it to all student groups. None of the bills that passed any of the other states have ever been challenged in court.
And I guess, well, and for that matter, have they been sued upon? Is anybody?
Yeah, right. Not that I'm aware of.
And I guess one last question, maybe why stop at the college campus? Why not extend this into the K-12 system?
Frankly, it's just not an issue that we've never seen a K-12 adopt an all-comers policy around the country.
Well, I would just suggest to you that there are issues that get dealt with having served on the school board. Occasionally, we get issues that fall in the same, but I just, not in the scope of this bill, I would just suggest to you that it's not unique to higher ed.
If we want to attack that issue next year, I'm game to work together on that.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the bill sponsor? Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to testify in support of House Bill 104?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Carl Esbeck, and I'm a professor of constitutional law at the University of Missouri School of Law, and I'm here in support of the bill.
I can get you to speak just a little closer to that microphone so we can hear.
How's that? Sorry, that's right. First of all, the bill is needed. I brought it with me to make exhibits to what I have to say. Exhibit 1 is an example where the University of Missouri did deny recognition to a Bridgewater fraternity, which was Christian centered. And so I brought evidence of that along with me. The second exhibit, which is more general, it's a compilation of the university rules for the MU system, the four-campus system. And the upshot of the way these rules work is that if you're a student Jewish organization, you can't require that your leadership be Jewish, which is a rather absurd result. So as I had interaction, I sort of informally talked with the campus representatives on my campus, the Columbia campus, and I didn't find a single religious group that in fact complied with the rules. So what we have is a discontinuity where the letter of the rules say one thing and actual practice is another, and we have rather spotty enforcement by the university. Obviously, that kind of discontinuity between the letter of the law and the actual practices is not a good situation. So it's sort of a form of what the campus reps say is they simply keep their head down. The second thing is, and I hope that the Judiciary Committee make their decision on this bill in an evidence-based way. And when there's a good deal of tug and pull here as to whether this bill would actually increase diversity on campus, which is, I think, our aim, and that would be the result, or whether it would increase it. But when you look at the evidence, just look at what student organizations are being kicked off campus. In California, it's the religious groups. At Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, it's the religious groups. It was the religious groups that were allowed to be kicked off campus in Ohio until the legislature there passed the bill. It was religious groups that were kicked off campus in Idaho until the legislature in Idaho passed the bill and rolled that back. So the groups that are clearly the ones that are being singled out and vulnerable are the religious organizations, and this kind of bill will increase diversity, which of course is what everyone says they're after. But when you look at the evidence, it's this kind of bill that will actually increase diversity. As to whether the bill will cause discrimination, again, I'd invite the committee to make an evidence-based decision. We've got, this bill's been in operation in a number of states: Ohio, Tennessee, Idaho, Oklahoma, Arizona, Virginia, North Carolina.
We'll have to meet the questions now, sir. I'm very sorry to interrupt you. Are there any questions for this witness? Any questions, Senator?
Thanks. And I just wanted you to, would you finish what happened in those other states? You were not to tell us what happened in those other states.
The evidence is that there's been no outbreak of discrimination by religious groups in those other states. So again, look at the evidence.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you being here. Anyone else to testify in support of House Bill 104?
I'm E. Scott Martin. I'm the National Director of Chi Alpha, which is the college ministries of the Assemblies of God Church on our secular universities. Assemblies of God is an institution of 68 million adherents worldwide. We have 13,000 churches here in the U.S., 413 are here in Missouri, with 51,000 adherents here in Missouri. Chi Alpha has 31,000 students involved in it nationwide. We're on 314 campuses. 13 of those, which are here in Missouri, with nearly 1,000 students participating. Although Chi Alpha is a college ministry of the Assemblies of God, the vast majority of students involved do not hail from the Assemblies of God background. There are Catholics, Baptists, Lutherans, Methodists, atheists, Muslims, Buddhists. It's a vast, diverse group. And the reason it's diverse is because Chi Alpha values diversity. It is one of our 6 core values. Chi Alpha College Ministries of the Assemblies of God hails from a long-standing heritage of doctrine, theology, and tradition. Students come to Chi Alpha because they desire to experience these teachings and the expression of worship, have the freedom to be able to learn and increase the diversity. To force Chi Alpha or any religious organization to compromise its leadership standards is the removal of the true expression of diversity on campus. Chi Alpha membership in Chi Alpha is open to all students on the university. Although in leadership, there are specific standards that are based upon the Bible and upon the interpretation of the Assemblies of God. I heard you mention just a minute ago, has this happened? Have we had any occurrences here in Missouri? Not yet, but I can tell you in 1970, Chi Alpha never could have been, we never could have imagined being expelled from the Cal State University system based upon our desire to select our members in accordance to the standards of our church. But that is the case today. So we need measures to be set in order to protect student religious organizations from being discriminated against and denied official status on Missouri universities today. As a parent of a son who is a Bright Flag Scholar and a Presidential Scholar, who is raised in the Assemblies of God, we expect our son to be able to attend Chi Alpha and not be concerned about there being a compromise of the values he's been taught or the doctrine he's been taught, or the theology. He considers Chi Alpha a place of fellowship and sacred sanctuary offered by the university and sponsored by his church. So I really plead to you to please help us secure our really our religious organizations on secular universities here in America, that they can continue to exist and have a presence.
Okay, questions for Senator Day?
Thank you. You confused me a little bit here, because what you just told me in your testimony is you're all inclusive. So how is this bill going to help your organization?
We're all inclusive in membership, but there's standards for leadership,
Right.
and they're biblical standards.
Right.
And so we adhere to those standards. If everyone in membership adheres to those standards, everyone's welcome to be part of leadership.
So, I mean, don't you elect your leadership, or how do you get your leadership?
The leadership is elected.
So do you think there'll be more people in the organization that don't adhere to those standards than do?
No. However, if people want to get nasty, and people really did want to make a point, there is a variable potential
for those to rise up and say, you know what? We really don't like Chi Alpha or any organization. We don't like the Muslim organization or the Jewish organization. Or we don't like even, I mean, this all-comers policy doesn't just relate to religious organizations. Let's say, you know what? We don't like the Young Democrats. So hey, Young Republicans, let's go in there, let's stack it, because they have to accept us all. Let's stack it right now, and we're gonna vote them all out, and we're gonna take authority. There's variable potential for that. We're just saying, let's safeguard it. Let's be proactive. Let's safeguard it. Let's protect us from discrimination.
Senator Hunter. And Mr. Martin, thank you for your testimony. You know, I'm glad you made a point. I'm glad you made. In college, to this day, and I'm an active practicing Roman Catholic. I cannot count how many times in college and medical school I was invited to non-Catholic Christian Bible studies, and always felt very, very welcome there. But really, a rule that insists that the leadership be members of, in your case, Assembly of God. It's religious freedom, it's institutional integrity, and it's quite frankly common sense. So, thank you.
And honestly, to be leadership, you do not have to be a member of these things. You can be Catholic, Methodist, Baptist. It's just the thing that says, hey, we adhere to the standards of leadership that Chi Alpha has as a national worldwide organization.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry, was Caltech that you specifically mentioned?
Cal State University
Cal State.
system. We're off of Cal State Stanislaus, San Diego, and others pending right now.
And how long did your organization exist at Cal State?
We have been on Cal State Stanislaus for 40 years.
And you were, and at what point did the university step in and?
The day before our first meeting of the semester, we were randomly selected, and this is why I say the protection against discrimination. We were randomly audited, selected, and then they said, well, you don't live up to the standards that we have for selecting leaders. Therefore, the day before we start all the university activities in your first meeting, we're expelling you from campus. Now, for all this year, we are unable to use any of the campus facilities. We're not able to have an official voice on the campus after 40 years and serving the university.
Did they explain what changed from 40 years to now?
No, it was a random one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate speaking. Anyone else to testify in support of House Bill 104?
Thank you, Linda Laird with Concerns Women for America, just going on record that we are in favor of House Bill 104.
Questions? Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, Joe Artworth with the Missouri Family Policy Council. Mr. Chairman, there will continue to be debate today and afterwards about the wisdom and merits of all-comers policies in higher education institutions. While that debate will continue to go on, aside from that debate, there's one fact of this situation that's indisputable, and that is that the U.S. Supreme Court has declared that all-comers policies, allegedly viewpoint neutral, are constitutionally permissible, but that they are in no way constitutionally required. The university can condition, the court said, the provision of public accommodations and public funding on an all-comers policy, but it is in no way required to do so, nor are state governments that oversee such universities required to accept such policies. Thus, this General Assembly does have the constitutional latitude to prohibit discriminatory policies like these that undermine the mission of student organizations, subvert their purposes, truncate their values, contravene their very reasons for existence. Mr. Chairman, I urge this committee to adopt this proposal. It's important that this General Assembly act to guarantee the institutional integrity and equal treatment of student organizations on college campuses, and to further guarantee that public funds, public benefits are not used as a tool of discrimination and religious oppression. higher education in this state and throughout this nation does not have to be synonymous with thought control or with repression of freedom of expression of thought and freedom of association. And even the most liberal justice on the Supreme Court in that case, Justice Ginsburg, agreed that freedom of association still remains sacrosanct. Any questions?
Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Joe. Even just the prior testimony to yours, I'm sure you were listening. It always, at least for 40 years of that testimony, the common sense was consistent with leadership, with the preservation of the principles that you just described. What has changed? I mean, why suddenly are we seeing this when it's always been common sense before that the leadership of any organization would reflect the values of leadership of the organization?
Well, I think that, in my opinion, as I've looked back over these decades, there's always been confusion among the average citizen, people in elected office as well, about the distinction that the Constitution has always drawn between the exercise of one's personal rights and access to public funding to enjoy those rights. And the courts have always distinguished between those two. Unfortunately, what we have seen more and more as time has gone on is the use and the availability of public funding to be used as a lever to force certain points of view. And unfortunately, that, I think, is what we see happening in these circumstances. To either influence and support certain points of view or to constrain and pull down other points of view.
All right, I understand what you're saying. When I look at this, one of the attacks that is being waged against this legislation and other legislation that's similar is that it authorizes discrimination. And I can remember when we were raising our children, we taught them to be discriminatory. We taught them to measure and to value and to discriminate between good ideas and bad ideas. So where is the line on discrimination? When does it move from a bad character quality to a good character quality, or from good to a bad?
Well, I think what you're speaking to, Senator, is the common sense in this matter. I don't know too many people who would suggest that the college wrestling club, if they say that you have to be a wrestler to be a member of the college club, is discriminating if they don't allow non-wrestlers to be members. Or the college chess club to say you need to play chess if you want to be in the college chess club. I think it's not something anyone would suggest that the college Democrats, if they choose not to have card-carrying Republicans admitted as members, I don't think people would say that constitutes discrimination. It should also not constitute discrimination for a Christian student organization to say that as we gather to meet, as the Constitution guarantees us the right to do, to associate together, have common purposes and values and beliefs that we share together, and to advance those in the setting that we are in, I don't think that should constitute discrimination.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else in support?
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. My name is Jeremy Cady, Western Longest from Federal Freedom. I just want to go over
Any questions for Mr. Cady? Thanks very much. Anyone else to testify in support of House Bill 104?
Hi, I'm Lisa Panett, and I live in South County, in St. Louis County. I'm just here to speak on behalf of the kids, because really that's what we're talking about here, the youth. And I have the great privilege of working with high schoolers and the youth on college campuses. And I just want to extend to you, just to say, to speak on their behalf, that please continue to extend to them the opportunity to be able to engage in religious organizations, because that's really what we're talking about here. And so I would just ask that you just would allow those children still the opportunity and youth to engage in these organizations.
Any questions for the witness? Thank you very much. Anyone else in support of House Bill 104? Last call. Anyone here to testify in opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Sarah Rossi, Director of Advocacy and Policy for the ACLU of Missouri. I have quite a few points to make. I'll try to be brief. I wish I knew that there were going to be exhibits. I would have filed for discovery and would love to see them. I first of all want to share a personal story. I was actually on the Student Bar Association when I was in law school. And when I was in law school, the Christian Legal Society, in their bylaws, required that members of their group, and especially leadership of their group, not be practicing homosexuals and not be supportive of LGBT rights. And just for everybody's reference, LGBT means lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. According to our law school's all-comers policy, you were not allowed in your student groups to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. So we withdrew their funds, which was about $150 of student fees that they could use for events and things like that. We were sued. I was the named defendant in that lawsuit, and we won. And the reason that the Student Bar Association won is because the Supreme Court has already ruled on this issue. In CLS v. Martinez, which is, I think, one of the cases that Representative Carr referenced, the Christian Legal Society sued the Hastings College of Law because of the same exact issue. They wanted to keep LGBT people out of their group and out of their leadership. The Supreme Court ruled that an all-comers policy was a constitutional policy, and that asking every student group to adhere to the same all-comers policy was not a violation of that group's First Amendment rights. As far as the First Amendment goes, you've already passed, or the Senate Education Committee already passed a really good campus First Amendment bill out of their committee. It was Senator Emery's bill, SB 93. It was a Campus Freedom of Expression Act that extended and expanded free speech rights on campus. This is not a good First Amendment bill. HB 104 is not a good First Amendment bill. And the reason I say that is because the groups that we're talking about, religious student groups, already have the right to be on campus and discriminate in their membership and their leadership as much as they want. They just can't do it in very specific circumstances when they discriminate in their leadership and membership. So the only thing that they are lacking is like a few $100s. I don't know what each school's policy is, what each student group gets, but they're lacking a little bit of funding and maybe some other tangential benefits. But that's the only thing that is taken away from them when they want to discriminate. No one is telling them they can't discriminate in their student groups. What schools are telling them is you can't have student fees, which are public funds, to do so. So you can go ahead and discriminate if you want, you just can't have money and we're not going to give it to you. That's what's at stake here. The other point I wanted to make, among many, is that different school systems have different rules. So the University of Missouri school system, for example, has an all-comers policy. Other university systems in Missouri do not have those policies. So this bill is going to impact those schools differently. And at the University of Missouri, the biggest impact for them is it's probably going to end up in some sort of lawsuits that's going to end up costing either the student group or the law school or the school or some other public entity a lot of money. The way it's going to play out in the ones that don't have these all-comers policies are they're going to be banned, basically, from ever having an all-comers policy and protecting students based on race, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, and any of the other protected classes. The last point I want to make is I'm going to turn in some testimony from a friend and colleague of mine named Mustafa Abdullah, who started a Muslim student group at his alma mater, Wake Forest. And he wrote a very beautiful statement about why his group and other religious groups should always be open to other students, because diversity and differences in points of view is the point of going to college. You're supposed to learn from each other and have a lively debate. The last point I want to make is that also when I was in law school, I was a member of the Native American Legal Society. I'm not a Native American. I joined that group because I care about their issues. I wanted to learn about them and I wanted to talk about them. I was welcomed into that group. I was welcome to talk about any of the things they wanted to talk about. And I was actually elected to leadership as a treasurer, even though I wasn't a Native American, and it didn't hurt anybody. And we talked about religious rights in that group because Native Americans do fight with the government a lot on their religious rights. So that's what I have for now. I'm sorry I tried to pack all that in 3 minutes. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know that the representative and the other proponents have a lot to say.
We'll make sure that what we have here is distributed to the committee. If you want to just leave it on the table there with the witness forms. Senator Emery has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sarah. Just a quick question here. I've heard you mention before the Native American organization. Was your worldview, your perspective on their issues vastly different than the general views of that organization?
Actually, yes, it was, and that's why I joined the group, because Montana law has a very strong Native American law program, and it's one of the biggest issues in the schools, one of the biggest issues in Montana. We have 7 reservations in Montana, over 13 tribes. So when I was in law school, I joined the group because I didn't know anything about their worldview. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know, what their view was on Native American law. I didn't know what their view was of the government's view on Native American law, and I joined the group to learn about them. And I think that this bill kind of flies in the face of that. I think students should be able to join groups if they want to learn about that group, if they want to learn about that group's issues, and that's never a detriment. Seeking knowledge shouldn't be punished.
What views did you have that were diametrically opposed to their purposes?
I don't know if they were diametrically opposed, I just didn't really have any, because I never really experienced Native American.
Okay, so it was more a lack of information.
Right.
Rather than a perspective. Okay, well, that's what I was asking. Is I'm wondering how effective a leader would be if their perspective on the goals of the organization was significantly different than those for which the organization was founded.
Right, and I think that can be answered by what I think Senator Kevin and I pointed out earlier, which is that leadership's elected. If somebody's going to be an ineffective leader, they're not going to be elected. I mean, that's up to the student group itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Another question,
Sarah, I'm a little confused. You made a statement that we're talking a couple $100 per student in student fees. We heard testimony earlier in California, 40 years worth of history, just walked in one day and threw them on campus. How do you reconcile that?
So what happened with the student groups that generally the proponents of these bills reference is that, and I can't speak for every system and every review. I don't know how every school reviews whether or not a school is adhering to their policies. In my particular circumstance, what we did was every time we got requests for student funding and recognition of a student group, we reviewed their bylaws. If their bylaws were in violation of the all-comers policy, we explained to them, asked them to change their bylaws. If they wouldn't do it, we wouldn't give them funding. So with these cases, my guess is that there was some process that happened, and the student government or whoever is in charge of review couldn't come to terms with those student groups. If those student groups were in violation of these all-comers policies. None of those student groups, the ones referenced in testimony, none of them were kicked off campus. Not receiving student fees, not receiving those public monies, and not having whatever other tangential benefits does not kick a group off campus. In our case, for example, you can still meet on campus. You can still hang out on campus. You can still be on campus. You're just not officially recognized and you don't get the benefits, but you can meet on campus and discriminate as much as you want. You just don't get the benefits. So no one was kicked off campus. They weren't barred from entering campus. They weren't barred from entering the building. They weren't barred from anything. They were barred from the student benefits because they violated an all-comers policy.
Thank you.
Yes, sure. Senator? So are students free to not pay student activity fees, or are they compelled to pay those fees?
They're compelled to pay those fees.
So they're compelled to pay those fees to go for a purpose that some groups may not agree with, right?
Yes. They're
Why
also
are we compelling them
compelled
to pay those fees?
Excuse me?
Why are we compelling them to pay the fees?
The theory behind the student fees is that everybody pays student fees so they can have access to the groups which they want to join.
Right, and they go to express political or religious views of some, but not of others. And somebody picks and chooses what those go to. So why are people free then to not pay fees if the fees aren't going towards what they want them to go towards?
I can't answer that question for you, Senator.
Thank you.
Interesting question. Any other questions? Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your testimony. Anyone else here to testify in opposition?
Senator, where would you like me to use? Thank you.
Hello, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kyle Picola, and I'm here to represent PROMA, which is Missouri's state-based LGBT advocacy organization. And I also just have a few points that I would like to talk about. I'd like to mirror what Sarah said about the court case in California. The reason this was brought forward to begin with was because they adopted a rule that said they cannot have gay members. Secondly, the case in Vanderbilt. From my understanding of the bill, this bill wouldn't even affect Vanderbilt because it's a private college. But the fraternity there that started this also was denying membership to day students. So to say that there isn't any example of this type of discrimination happening from an organization on campus, I would say is ingenuine. It's also not like the Greek structure, in the sense that a Greek structure still has to abide by the non-discrimination policy of the university. So that fraternity or that sorority cannot deny membership based on sexual orientation, race, stuff like that. They also don't, a fraternity or sorority does not receive subsidized space. Most of the time, they either have already paid for it or they lease it out and pay to be there. And also this bill doesn't prevent the student takeover that was brought up earlier. I don't know how you would define someone sincerely held beliefs, but I think just as easily someone could join a group on false pretenses and try to get the same thing. So like I mentioned in the last testimony, I don't think that would happen. I think students are busy. I don't think they have the time to form two, but I don't think this prevents that from happening. And just on a last note, campuses across the state have worked really hard to make sure that they're welcoming and accessible to all students. They have non-discrimination policies that have included gender identity as well as sexual orientation for good reason, and we'd like to make sure that universities continue to be welcome to all students. I have available for questions.
Any questions, please? Thank you very much for your testimony. Next witness in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the committee. My name is Jennifer Bernstein, and I am the Director of Advocacy and Communications at Central Reform Congregation. We are a synagogue in the city of St. Louis, and I'm here on behalf of our 3 rabbis and 750 families. I'm kind of aghast that people are bringing the Jewish community into this. The rabbi that you mentioned, actually, representative, is not actually affiliated officially with Princeton. He's with an organization called Chabad, which is an ultra-Orthodox organization, and is not affiliated with the campus. And he probably would represent, I would say, less than 3 to 5% of the Jewish community's viewpoints on this. Most Jewish people would be kind of appalled by this law. I just feel like this sets a dangerous precedent, and like the Indiana bill, it singles out the LGBT community. And it could also lead to singling out of Jews, Muslims, and other minorities. And as a Jewish person, our tradition teaches us that the dignities of our fellow human beings are as important and precious to our own. And we just feel that diversity is a good thing. And, you know, speaking at my synagogue, our executive director for 9 years, he recently retired, is a practicing Catholic. So it's not like it's not been done before. This is a sacred time of year for a lot of Jews and Christians, and we celebrated Passover, reminded of the long and ongoing journey to liberation and redemption for all people who face discrimination. And we just feel that this is not an appropriate law, and it's just going to foster more discrimination against the LGBT community.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I certainly believe in diversity. So my question for you is, you mentioned that the LGBT community is singled out in this bill. Can you point that out to me?
I can't answer that myself. It's just a gut feeling I have. You know, in some of the cases of some of the organizations that say, if you are, like Sarah mentioned, if in her, the Bar Association, if you are a member of the LGBT community, you cannot be a member of the organization.
I just didn't see a reference in the bill itself.
I'm a little nervous, I apologize.
Thank you. Any other questions, Senator Sidney?
Well, to be clear, this bill is quite a bit different than the one in Indiana that's been filed in these regulations. To be fair, this doesn't go into business accommodations or other areas. This is a campus freedom association issue, as I understand it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Justin. Next witness.
Good morning, my name is Karen Oresti. I'm the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League for Missouri and Southern Illinois. And I just have a couple of brief comments. I would rise in opposition, but also for informational purposes. I would suggest that this proposed legislation is essentially made redundant by Missouri's RFRA. The Senator had mentioned RLUIPA, which was passed federally in 2000. This body passed and the governor signed into law Missouri's Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 2003. I would argue that the language is very similar, the standards are similar, that the government entities considered by Missouri RFRA are the same as those suggested by public institutions and universities. And so I'm not sure that there is a need proactively. And I think in my last, admittedly unscientific survey of the litigation that has been brought up for RFRA since its passage, you can count the cases on less than a hand. I think the Anti-Defamation League would also be distressed to know that this body sanctioned religiously based discrimination that was presented as protection of religious observance. I don't have any cases to offer since we are speaking proactively and preemptively. But I will say that personally I have watched at the University of Missouri as one particular fraternity. My son happens to be very engaged in Alpha Epsilon Pi, which is a Jewish fraternity, has been welcoming to Christian brothers now for some years, with the express purpose that that kind of diversity really makes a superb difference as college students navigate the vagaries and ambiguities that are growing up on campus. I'm happy to take any questions, but I would suggest that the legislation is already answered by a response that was published by this body 12 years ago.
Any questions for this witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else who testify in opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us this afternoon. My name is Andrew Miller, and I'm a proud Catholic and also the Vice President of Student Government at UMKC. UMKC is the University of Missouri's campus at Kansas City, and we are very proud of the culture of diversity and inclusion that we've built there over the years. What makes UMKC special, and the reason I'm here today, is because UMKC is a commuter campus. Only 10% of our students live at UMKC, the other 90% commute. So at the end of the school day, 3 or 4 o'clock, most of the students go home. And so it's really hard to create a campus life for them. And so what we do is we make a huge investment in student associations. And so every student, as we mentioned earlier, they pay a fee. At UMKC, it's $17 per credit hour. And that goes into a big pot, and then a student allocating body diverts that money to student associations. But each, before the disbursement, they all get $300 just for being a UMKC student association. So that's why UMKC students are opposed to it, because everyone pays in. And to be taken out of a group because you that you pay for because you don't agree with their religious beliefs, we think is wrong. And that's why our students voted overwhelmingly to force associations to comply with the statement of inclusion that explicitly states that it's open to everyone. So to close, I agree with the bill sponsor. We should treat all student associations fairly, and as a man of faith, I agree that religious freedom is paramount and worth protecting. But at the end of the day, this is a student issue, and we have already decided. And if I have any time left, I want to answer the senator's question.
You need to address your comments to the entire committee.
Okay, to the entire committee. The senator asked, why should you have to pay student fees to something you disagree with? And I would say that the college Democrats are stronger when the college Republicans exist. Because at the universities, we believe that you should have to work with other people different from yourself. And that would be my answer to that question.
Senator.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Now, are you here on behalf of the university or on yourself? Are you testifying on behalf of the university?
I'm here on behalf of the student government at UMKC.
So you're representing the student government?
Yes.
They've actually sent you here to be their representative?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thanks very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to testify?
Hi there, everybody. My name is Peyton Head. I am a junior at University of Missouri studying political science and international studies. I also serve as a 2015 student body president. So I represent the nearly 28,000 undergraduate students at the University of Missouri. The university works hard to foster an environment in which students have the opportunity to learn within and outside of their comfort zones. This is a necessary educational opportunity as places of employment here in Missouri and across the country, as we as students are preparing to enter, are more diverse than ever. Federal law permits employees from discriminating. If we allow associations to discriminate, we invariably create an atmosphere that does not reflect the workforce that they're preparing to enter. Therefore, we're doing them a great disservice. Student associations at the University of Missouri play a vital role in creating an atmosphere of inclusion and an environment of equal opportunity among students here. The University of Missouri requires all recognized student associations to comply with its anti-discrimination policy, which states, the University of Missouri does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, age, disability, or status as a qualified protected veteran. House Bill 104 conflicts with the University of Missouri's promise of fairness and inclusion, and instead will guarantee a student association the right to discriminate against the students on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and religious observance requirements and beliefs. In addition, the Constitution of the state of Missouri precludes the state from the business of religious entirely from valuing any set or sets of belief over any other set or sets of beliefs. But House Bill 104 mandates public institutions like the University of Missouri to yield special consideration for religious organizations, exempting them from prohibitions on discrimination that apply to every other facet of campus life per the UM system's anti-discrimination policy. At the University of Missouri, we have seen and continue to see the harm that comes when populations exclude themselves from embracing the diversity of our campus community. As the chief executive of the Missouri Students Association, representing the best interests of the undergraduate students of the University of Missouri, I am in adamant opposition to the passage of this bill. And I think that it will be damaging to the values that our university strives to uphold each day. Do I have any questions?
Any questions, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also have a bill from the Missouri Students Association Senate in opposition to this, and I'll be leaving it up here with my.
Wonderful, if you'll leave there on that. I think they're, the witness form is there. And I should have said this at the beginning, that everyone who testifies must fill out a witness form. Thank you very much. Anyone else to testify in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the time to come and speak with you guys today. My name is Joel Wangenecker, and I'm the Legislative Director for the Associated Students of the University of Missouri, also known as ASUM. ASUM represents around 77,000 students across 4 campuses, which include Mizzou and Missouri SMT, UMSL, and UMKC. Today you heard from the student government associations from MU and UMKC on this issue. Student leaders across the UM system have voiced their concerns about this issue and how this policy could affect our campuses. All University of Missouri campuses promote inclusion, not exclusion, among our student organizations. And this bill could allow for discrimination on our campuses, something that we work very hard against. This bill could create a campus environment where students argue and have conflicts with the administration using this exclusion of certain students. We want to ensure that all of our students, no matter their race, religion, or sexual orientation, feel safe on our campuses. And we certainly want to protect all religious groups on campuses. However, we do not feel that this bill will accomplish this effectively. It seems this bill was fashioned without the inclusion of student groups, and we ask that this happen, that student groups be included in this with such legislation. Furthermore, current campus policies protect student views and freedom of religion on campuses. And we feel that rather than protecting the student views, the student leaders here today are concerned that this bill may encourage discrimination and exclusion. As a student voice in the Missouri State Government, ASUM urges you to oppose this bill. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else in opposition? How many more are here to testify on this bill? Okay. We have 5 more bills, and we have 45 minutes left, so we're going to speed it up. What's an executive session? Go ahead.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Mike Kinman. I'm the Dean of Christ Church Cathedral, the Episcopal Cathedral in St. Louis. I also spent 10 years as a campus chaplain at Washington University, University of Missouri. And as I was reading the language of this bill, and I know it's a legal technical term, but I was struck by the language of substantially burdening the exercise of religion. And it took me back to 10 years ago when I stood with an amazing man, Bulin Dali, who was the bishop of the Diocese of Louis in South Sudan. And I stood with him on the ground there, and he showed me the spot where soldiers came into his village and made him dig his own grave and made him kneel in front of it with a gun to his head. And in that moment, he prayed. And he prayed out loud, and he prayed for the souls of those who had the gun to his head. And through the grace of God, their hearts were turned, and his life was spared. And he was able to stand with me on that spot. I think we would all agree that that is substantially burdening the exercise of religion. And as a follower of Jesus Christ who has been to South Sudan, and has stood with Christians in their fight for free exercise of religion, I'm troubled when people of my faith equate exposure to diversity with religious infringement and persecution. I believe our constitutional right to the exercise of free exercise of religion was and is meant to protect people of faith against real burden, against real persecution, the kind of persecution that some of them literally fled other shores for our shores for. And I also believe it's an offense to people of faith throughout the world who are truly under the specter of genuine persecution, whose free exercise of religion is genuinely substantially burdened, to pass legislation like this in the name of religious freedom. And there's a special reason for that, because it's bills like this, which intentionally or not, which will allow religious groups to isolate themselves from difference and will allow they themselves to discriminate. Those kind of bills encourage the conditions on which the kind of extremism that develops when our views are not regularly challenged by respectful people of divergent and differing views. When we create the conditions where we are only able to be with people who believe exactly as we do, that works counter to understanding, and it promotes discrimination in wider society. And so I encourage you to vote against this bill. I urge defeat of this bill, really for the sake of the very religious freedoms that I believe that the sponsors of this bill aim to protect.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. And our last witness. Madam Secretary.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Haslide. I'm a citizen. Most of what I'm going to say is basically I'm just going to support most of what has been said previously, because I'm going to echo a lot of it. The only statement I would like to make in addition, and it was raised by one of the senators, that he was a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. I think if he is paying attention to Pope Francis, he should develop a totally different attitude in terms. Let's turn an example to a Newman Center in a college campus, which would probably come with a description of what this legislation is intended to protect. Under what you're saying essentially is that Newman Center should ignore Pope Francis. I think the point that I have, and the problem that I have, is that in all cases we should be more welcoming rather than, since it's obviously concerned with religious protection, the point is that essentially I think we should be more welcoming in terms of how we approach it and accepting of other people, rather than saying simply because they do not have a lifestyle that is simply exactly the same as ours, that we cannot in any way relate to those people, especially as to echo the comments made by the previous speaker.
Any questions for Mr. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Nisso. I'm wondering, these days people throw around the term the phrase Pope Francis the way, when I was growing up, they threw out the phrase Spirit of Vatican II. I'm wondering, do you think Pope Francis would approve of Christian groups being thrown off the University of California campus system?
First of all, I never throw around the term Pope Francis. I have the greatest and highest degree of respect for the man, and I think he has fundamentally changed the way the Catholic Church is looking at a great degree and in terms of a great number of issues. In terms of your specific question, I would think Pope Francis would ask, why the heck are you not accepting these people in the first place?
Would Pope Francis say that a Moon Center ought to be, let's say, required to fire their Catholic priest chaplain and replace him with a chaplain of another denomination?
In terms of another denomination, I think you're dealing with a whole different question. Then you're asking basically, should it, for example,
I mean, it seems to me you could apply some of these newcomers, anycomers rather, policies to the Newman Center and say that, well, leadership of Newman Centers is generally Catholic clergy. Why are they allowed to discriminate? Why not a Lutheran minister rather than a Catholic priest at the Newman Center?
if it was Pope Francis,
or you,
if it was me, that is a difficult question, Senator. I will be quite honest about that. But I do not think that we're talking about a question of whether or not it's a Lutheran versus a Catholic versus an Assembly of God versus a Presbyterian versus a Baptist. We're talking about whether it's an individual who has a quote-unquote lifestyle.
Mostly we're talking about leadership here, and as a Catholic, I need priests to say mass for me in Sunday. So
that's very true. I have one every Sunday that I go to as well.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the witness?
I will leave my remarks with the. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Church does. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else to testify in opposition before we close the hearing? All right, seeing none, that will close the hearing on House Committee Subject for House Bill 104. We will now move to House Bill 108 for Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Representative John McCarty from the 97th District, Jefferson County, and I bring you House Bill 108. It comes from a request from the mental health community. Quite a bit more simple than the last bill you heard. Basically, the statute 115 or 116-105 currently lists several medical professionals as having a 2-year statute of limitations in them, and then it leaves it open to any other entity providing healthcare services. And that statute was adopted in 1976. It wasn't until the late 1980s that the state of Missouri actually started recognizing it. National Mental Health Counseling. And so the issue, if we're typically clarified, is that the mental health professionals would actually be included in that statute of limitations. Many legal professionals have already concluded that to be the case, and they currently believe that that's the case, and the language that we are offering today is simply clarifying language to the existing statute. However, those who are mental health professionals, they have been trained in their schooling and counseled by their employers and their insurance folks that they do not fall under that statute of limitations. So it's causing some miscommunication. The legal community believes that they are insurance companies, and education process believe that they are not. So with that comes a problem of malpractice insurance, which we have some counselors that are holding malpractice insurance until the day that they die. Many years after they retire, they're still holding on to documents and records from counseling sessions from years and years previously. I was actually speaking to one who has actually rented a storage facility. She's been out of practice for a number of years, and she has a storage facility with all of her records that every month she has to pay rent on. because they do not believe that they fall within that. However, the legal community believes that they are. So what we would like to do is to clarify that language and simply add those few words, that mental health professionals licensed under Chapter 337 would be included in that statute of limitations. And that includes psychiatrists and people with master's degrees and above, and counselors. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for those folks?
Real quickly, so we're going with from no statute of limitations, 2 years,
Currently, the legal community, the trial attorney folks, the judges, everyone who already looks at this, they look at it and they say they believe that they are already under the 2 year. So should a case go to court, they would look at it and they say, we think they're under the 2 year already. Because it says any other entity providing healthcare services in statute. So in one essence, yes, for them, they're looking at it as they have no statute of limitations whatsoever. The legal profession is already looking at it and saying that they are already included. So we just want to clarify that instance.
Any questions? Anyone here to testify in support of House Bill 108?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Holdinghouse, Executive Director of the Missouri Mental Health Counselors Association. Our members are primarily licensed professional counselors in private practice and agency work. We just want to go on record in support of this bill. There's a clarification to make sure that the mental health professionals are covered under the statute of limitations like other healthcare professionals.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else testify in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Lisa Christie, and I'm here representing the Missouri Psychological Association, and everything has pretty much been explained. So yes, we're in support of this. We'd like clarification done.
Any questions for this?
Thank you
very much. Anyone else to testify in support? First.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Morris, representing the Missouri Hospital Association, and we're
Any questions? Anyone else to testify in support? Last call. Anyone to testify in opposition? We have closed the hearing on House Bill 108. We'll now move to House Bill 95. Representative Miller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman, committee members. For the record, I'm Rocky Miller, representative of District 124, which is the Lake of the Ozarks area. House Bill 95 proposes to allow a policyholder of an insurance policy to petition the court for reimbursement of insurance costs that occur during the pendency of divorce or separation proceedings. Currently, if a spouse has insurance on the other spouse, it must stay in place, and the policyholder must continue to pay during the pendency of the divorce or the separation. Sounds like a good idea on the surface, but unfortunately, we have one of those laws with unintended consequences. Some spouses take on the entire insurance burden of the family and are left with very little take-home pay because they're able to get insurance, so the company may offer insurance, but it is cheaper for the family overall. Then unfortunately, a divorce is filed, and then a spouse has to take on the entire insurance burden through the pendency of the divorce or the separation, which may last 2, 3, 4 years. So what this bill does is it allows for instructions to be given to the attorneys and to the judge that during the pendency of the divorce and during the separation, that those costs can be apportioned. Worked with Representative Minton on this, and we had a bipartisan bill came out of the House 155 to 1. There, that concludes my testimony. Open to question.
Any questions for Senator Kennedy?
Who is the one?
My friend.
Any other questions? Okay. Proponents in favor of, I guess that would be as opposed to proponents against. Those in favor of House Bill 95? Anyone here to testify in favor? Anyone in opposition? Last call. That will close the hearing on House Bill 95. Representative, thank you very much. We will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 439. Senator Lavoda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Senator Paul Lavoda, 11th Senatorial District, here to present Senate Bill 439. This provides that Division 12 of 16th Circuit Judicial Circuit shall sit in the city of Independence. Currently in Jackson County, we have 2 county seats. We have Kansas City and Independence. And we, in our circuit, our 16th Judicial Circuit, there are 19 divisions. Some are in Kansas City, some are in Independence, and they're by statute. What this bill did would move the 12th division to the Independence. As the county courthouse is being remodeled to have another courtroom there, and as the population has grown in eastern Jackson County compared to the city, the judges themselves have brought this idea to move that one division to Jackson County. The good news that I have on this bill is that this is something that the county, the courts, and all of us who represent Jackson County are in favor of. So with that, I'm glad to answer any questions. There are 2 people to testify here.
Okay. Any questions for Senator Lavoda?
Does Division 12 have a particular designated purpose? Is it a criminal, family, equity, or is it just a general division?
I believe it's a general